Hello, Elisha, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for having me on.
It is so exciting to have you here. I'm excited to hear your story and, and the work that you do and how you can help the listeners. So, Elisha, let's start first with where are you tuning in from?
I'm in sunny Las Vegas.
Amazing. Las Vegas. Fantastic stuff. So, a destination for many of the listeners. I'm sure that you stay far away from the strip, though, with all of the tourists and the traffic. Usually when you live in those vacation destinations, you're the furthest thing from the place where everybody wants to go.
I really am. I live and this is home for me. I'm a local. I've lived here my entire life, Christine, but I do live probably 45 minutes out. I'm actually in a suburb called Henderson, which is at the base of the mountain, but I love it. And yes, I spent many of years playing tourist on the strip and having all the fun, but yes, I did stay away as far as possible
Yeah, yeah,
nowadays.
fair. Yeah,
Have
yeah.
you ever been?
I have, yeah, yeah. I did, what was it? A stagette, typical stuff. I was there for a stagette. I was there for a work conference. I've been there a few times, but once you've seen it, you've seen it. So,
Very true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, that's great. So let's start first here, Alicia, with who is Alicia and what brought you to the work that you do?
Thank you, first of all, Christine, for having me on today. And
Mhm.
first and foremost, I'm a dog lover. I know that really doesn't, say much about my work, but really to the core, that's who I am. So that's always how I start introducing myself. And that's what most people know me as a dog lover. But professionally, I've been in talent acquisition for almost 20 years. I've been with the same organization for 18 years this month in corporate in a corporate recruiting position, but that is just my day job. My true
Mhm.
passion comes from my authorship and my coaching. I wrote and published a book, my first book, about 2 years ago, and now I'm working on my second book called Breakup with Burnout, which will be, I'm sure, a huge topic of what we talk about today. And that will be published in less than 90 days. I'm almost at the finish line. And it comes from
Congratulations.
personal experience. Thank you. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. I spent 3 years in burnout in the corporate space and coming out on the other side of it. I can't wait to share how I did it and to help other women get out of corporate burnout as well without leaving their paycheck. A lot of people think that you have to leave your job to leave burnout, and that's not always the case. So I do talk, of course, a lot about that in my book. And I also coach as well, coach women on burnout recovery and how to just inject joy into their life. So just to kind of wrap me up, I really am, I'm a type A personality, but I am always happy. It's, my friends and coworkers call me the office golden retriever. I'm always smiling, I'm always happy. And I just want to bring that to other women as well. And then, of course, my long-term life goal is to save as many dogs as possible. That's me in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. So I assume you have many pets at home, yeah?
Well, right now I have two German Shepherds, and
Okay.
they are my children. I know you're a
Yeah.
new mom, which is super exciting. I don't have any
Yeah.
kids, but I am the Uber dog mom that, treats them like children and they're everything. But throughout my life, yes, I've had tons of animals.
Oh, amazing. Well, that's good. I'm hope the German Shepherds are doing great and that you had a really good Mother's Day with them.
I did. Thank you. Yes,
Good,
thank you.
good. Well, so that's exciting stuff that, that's such a typical story. I had this corporate position, I was in burnout, I left it, etc. But a a quick turn from I left it to I stayed in it and I found a way to come out of that burnout. So a lot of our listeners, Alicia, are not necessarily corporate, but they are absolutely in burnout. We have a
Yep.
lot of people who they're in, health burnout with in and out of hospitals all the time. They're in burnout in their marriages. They're just in burnout, right? And so I'm wondering if your work translates to that sort of burnout as well. Would you say that you can kind of stay in those areas through necessity or interest, but you can still rise above this burnout?
Yes, such a great point, Christine. I'm glad you brought that up. And I actually have a paragraph in the very first introduction of my new book that states, although a lot of what I'm talking about in the book is geared towards corporate burnout, because that's where my experience was, my framework, my teachings, my lessons can apply to any state of burnout. And I literally state that burnout is not just exclusive to the corporate space. It could be in, as you mentioned, in health. You could be burnout in a relationship, in a friendship, in adulthood, in motherhood, in parenthood, in a health scenario, and not even in a corporate space, but any job that you're in. And I associate burnout with just doing the same life lane for so long without any joy being put
Oh,
back into your life. So it's almost like you're expelling all this energy. And sometimes it's, you're frustrated, you're overworked, or, just unfulfilled in the spot that you're in. And so my teachings can help you not necessarily get out of the situation you're in, but get out of the burnout.
okay. What you just said there really stopped me. Because I often associate burnout with too many hours, not enough sleep, etc. But you're associating burnout to, I assume that, but also, and by extension, burnout being in a space that you've been in for a very long time that is not that there is no joy. And so let's just like simmer on that for a second because that's perking my ears, and I'm sure that anyone
Okay,
listening is
good.
going like, okay, I've been feeling really burnt out too, and I haven't had any joy either. So let's just simmer on that. Tell me more about that.
Yes, absolutely. And you're so right. I do want to touch on something you said that most burnout, when people think burnout, it is too many hours, overworked, and just too many hours, which, yes, that is burnout. But burnout is also not having any joy, being unfulfilled, unsatisfied in your current space, whatever that may be. And I've lived that, and I'm sure many of your listeners have, or either are living that right now. And my whole purpose in my book and my coaching, no matter what state of burnout you're in, is to bring joy back to your life. And the way you do that, and it's going to be really subjective to each individual listener because joy comes in many different forms to many different people. And what I teach and what I personally learned is joy comes from doing something that makes your what I say your heart sparkles. So for me, it's my dogs or my writing. Whenever I'm writing or I'm with my dogs, I am in just the most joyous state mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That is where I find my joy. But that's not, for everyone. Some people find their joy with their children or in dancing or painting or swimming. There are so many, I've had so many of these conversations, Christine, and I like to ask women or any profession I speak with is what is your one thing? And some people know it right away. Like I said, they'll say, "Oh, I'm a writer, or I'm a reader, or I'm a swimmer, I'm whatever it may be." But there's a lot of people that don't know what brings them joy, and they're not broken.
True.
That's that they're. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but uh, I want them to find it, and you can do it through exploration and experimentation, but I want the listeners and my future readers when my books come out to really find something in your life, if you don't know what it already is, that truly brings you joy. What is that one thing that truly brings you joy? And do more of it. Do more of it. And the more joy you bring into your life, the less burnout you have. Even if you're still in the job, the relationship, the friendship, the space that's bringing you burnout, when you start injecting that joy, the burnout starts to fade.
That's amazing. I hear something that warrants being brought up, and that's that, a lot of people don't realize that they what their joy is. And something that came to my mind was I wonder if the reason why some people don't know what their joy is because they're looking for a conventional joy. So they're looking for like a skill, a talent. And so then they're saying, like, oh, singing is my joy, painting is my joy, right? And more like exercise is my joy. But maybe your joy is listening to romantasy books. Maybe your
Mhm.
joy is cleaning your home and resetting it and lighting a candle. Like it could be things that are not typical. Um, do you know what I mean? Like talents,
Non-conventional. Hmm. Yeah.
non-conventional ways of
Yes.
finding joy. Because people
Yes.
have asked me that before. What's your joy? And I'm like, oh gosh, can I say out loud going for drinks with friends? Because like that's like, you know, that's probably not a super like healthy thing. But, I find so much joy in connecting with human beings, right? And
Oh.
having drinks and good food, and I just find that so enjoyable. And so, I like that you kind of pointed out that people don't know what their joy is, but it's unique to them.
Hmm.
I think
Yes.
that's
And
magic.
thank you for saying that. And I want to really, really bring up or touch on something you just mentioned. And right before you said, is it okay if I say going to drinks for friends? And I think a lot of people have that same feeling is, am I allowed to feel joy doing this if it's not conventional? And I'll say, Christine, if that's where you get your joy, girl, do more of that. And, I always say, as long as you're not harming yourself or anyone else, then your joy, it shouldn't matter what anyone else thinks of how you get your joy. This is your life. You're not living it for anyone else. And yes, we have, of course, our children and our spouses and friends and family that, we live with, but you're only living for yourself. So whatever that joy is to you, be proud of it and do more of it. And I wanted to touch on that because I feel like a lot of people think in their mind and maybe not even say it out loud is, I don't know if that's okay if it's my joy. Can I say that? Can I do that? And yes, absolutely. If it brings you joy, don't be ashamed of it. Be proud of it and do more of it.
Uh, I think that let's just repeat that. If you don't be ashamed of it, do more of it.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Cheers.
And I want to say that a lot of people probably share that, Christine, with you. Going out, the human connection, eating. You said one thing that I mean perked up my ears. I get joy from food and the act of eating and just enjoying the sustenance. I know some people just eat to satisfy that, human need, but I eat to enjoy. I love food and more sweets and bakery type sugary items, but I
Love it.
love food. And so when you said that, drinking and eating and connecting with friends, I think that's a very acceptable and, a part of joy that I'm sure many people would share with you, Christine.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. For sure, for sure. Yeah, my joys are definitely very atypical. I love cleaning my house. People are like,
We
"What?"
will get along. Yeah, no. I,
Yeah.
I when you
Pardon?
said that, I thought she's speaking to my heart because
Yeah.
again, I am. very obsessive compulsive about cleaning. My cupboards look like the grocery store where everything's facing the same
Same.
way. Love
Hmm.
cleaning. And so that when you said that, I thought she must like that. And I like her for that. So yes,
Yeah.
that may not be conventional. That's a perfect example of maybe that's not conventional. But if it brings you joy, hey,
Good. Do
be
it.
proud of it. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cool. I love this. I'm sure that the person listening's going like, you know what? I have some joy in this, and I never really thought of that as joy. So, thank you for bringing up that really important differentiator that many people don't bring up. You always hear that. What brings you joy? Is it yoga? Is it painting? Is it you hear those things, but it's always just kind of just flies over your head and you're like, okay, yeah, but I don't really have any talents, so I don't know, right? And so I really
Hmm.
enjoy the rawness and the realness of that. So what is the function of this joy? So when joy comes into play for you and you find your own specific unique joy, you said burnout dissipates.
Hmm.
So what is the function of that? Like how does it play into the dissipation of burnout?
So I see the opposite of burnout is peace of mind. And,
Okay.
burnout is a really concentrated stress. And when you're burnt out, you're stressed, you're frustrated, again, you're unfulfilled, you're dissatisfied, sometimes you're angry, sometimes it comes through with physical manifestations, through headaches and stomach aches. So when you're burnt out, you are just unhappy, you're stressed. And the opposite of that to me is peace, a peace of mind, satisfaction, joy, happiness. And when you start bringing more joy into your life, when you start doing more things or the one thing over and over that bring you joy continually, it's bringing peace into your life. It's cutting out the stress, it's cutting out the frustration, and even in a moment, if you're, sliding back into that burnout feeling, even just thinking about doing the thing, like, oh, later, I'm going to use the cleaning one. So as we talk, just as an example to move forward, Christine, I'm going to use that cleaning the house as an example. So even when you're thinking about it, you start to pull away from burnout or the feeling of stress of burnout because you know that your life has joy. And so that and I see it as, burnout attacks the whole body experience, which is the brain, the mind, or the brain or the mind. I use those interchangeably, but the brain, the body, and the soul. So once you start doing something that brings you joy, gives you peace of mind, that joy when you're doing it or thinking about it also relaxes your body, your shoulders set back, you take a deep breath, you lose that, frustration in the jaw or the tightness, you just relax in the body. And then in the soul, you feel fulfilled. Your identity is full. You feel good on the inside. And so when you start putting more things in your life that bring you joy, you start cleaning the house more, whatever that is, joy to anyone listening, you start to pull away from burnout, and it doesn't happen right away. I want to point something out, Christine. I think I don't want the listeners to think, oh, good, I'll go do my joy and I won't be burnt out anymore. But it really does take weeks, months, and sometimes even year of continually putting small pieces of joy into your life that accumulate that will eventually pull you out of burnout completely. But although it doesn't happen overnight, it will eventually bring you peace.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of imagery of like fill your cup, right? And so when you talk about filling your cup, it seems almost like there's only so much you can take in your life, for example, if I were to give a kind of a metaphor. And if the cup is mostly full of stress, anxiety, things that bother you, not enough, too much work, etc., and unhappiness, then your peace goes down. But what you're saying is that we're filling our cup, therefore giving less room for that, stress and that burnout to fit into that space, right? So I'm kind of hearing that it's the kryptonite, it's the anecdote to your burnout, but it could take time.
Well said. And yes, thank you for pointing that out. Love the kryptonite. That is such a great metaphor. I'm gonna have to use that.
There you
But
go.
yes, I am. I love that, the kryptonite. And you're so right. And a lot of times it's really what we focus on. Of course, when we're burnt out, it's hard to focus on the things that do bring us joy because we're wallowing a lot of time. And
And
when you're burnt out, you're stressed, it feels like every tiny little thing frustrates you even more. And I say this from my personal experience and the women I've coached and worked with. I remember being at work and again, I'm a naturally happy person, just been that way my whole life. But during my state of burnout, the tiniest things would frustrate me. Someone else's mood, a short email, innocuous things that should not make me frustrated made me so frustrated. It and that's in burnout, it's hard to get out of that. You're stuck in that. And that again brings up when you just have to inject it in small, just fill your cup. I'm gonna use your metaphor, just small little pieces of joy at a time. You start building them up and you start doing them more. And then, your focus goes or energy flows where your focus goes, right? So if you start focusing more on the joy, then your energy is going to be more joyful and
Mhm.
you'll start pushing, I guess pouring more of the frustration out and pouring in more of the joy in your cup. So yeah, great metaphor, Christine.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I have a million questions, but I think the one that I'll start with is in the process of your burnout, you infused more joy. Did you have to take days off? Did you have to, take a vacation? Did you need more sleep? What was some other components that helped you move away from the burnout? Because I'm thinking about, like, for example, we've got I myself am a cancer patient, so that's where not currently, but that's where my mind goes. Someone who has to
Okay.
continually go to these appointments, right? They're just appointment, 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 like it's bad news after bad news. That's not going to stop, right? And so we can infuse joy into our lives, and we can start to feel more peace slowly with time by having more moments of joy. But we can't stop the appointments. And so I think about you can't stop the work. You have to work.
Hmm. Hmm.
So talk us through that component of what you went through. So you didn't actually leave your job. So talk us through how continuing to do the thing you don't like um, can be helped in some way.
Yeah. Great question. Great question. And from my experience, the work that I was going to, it was my entire identity, Christine. I had nothing else. And again, I'll repeat that I have my family and my dogs and my friends, but my job was my everything. It was what I, tied my entire worth to. And I'm going to sort of
Mm.
associate that with, what you spoke of when you have going to cancer appointments or any type of appointments, sometimes it feels like that's your only thing, that you feel like that's your entire identity. I don't have anything outside of that. And my Burnout, my breakup with burnout, and the reason I came up with the title Breakup with Burnout is
I
I
love.
have this, thank you. And the reason, and I'll take a little sidebar, is because, you know, to me in my situation, it wasn't my job, it was my relationship with my job. It was my everything. I had
Beautiful.
nothing else. And so everything was tied to my work. And I was working towards a promotion for 3 years, a promotion that I did not get. And so it felt like my
Mm.
life was over at that moment. And it's an interesting story, and I'll condense it. But the day that I found out I didn't get the promotion was the same day or I opened I started the process to open a small business with my mom and my sister. So I
Okay.
almost fractured off my identity. So instead of tying my entire identity to my one job, my mom and my sister and I decided to open a small bakery on the side. And it was just going to be, something fun to do on the weekends. But as soon as I had something else, Christine, in my life to put that focus on, put that attention to, I realized I wasn't just employee number one, two, three. I was. I had a
Yeah.
job, but now I had this other thing to focus on, to put energy to, that was all mine, something I could be creative with and something that I could build and focus on. And I had another identity. And my mom and myself and my sister, we went on to uh, do this bakery for over 5 years. It's, started as a small business. But to answer your question, I didn't take any time off out of the normal. Yes, I would take a day off here and there or take my yearly vacation. But when I did take time off, I was focusing on something other than work, where previously, when I would take time off, all I would do is stress about work. I would just think about, oh, I have that email, I
Oh.
have that project, and I think a lot of us, and when I talk about identity, that there's a lot of, you uh, there's a lot of different things that people think when someone says identity, and what I really mean is your talent in form, what you do in your expression of talent into form. And so my whole identity was my job, and that's who I was Elisha the recruiter. But then when I started a small business, I was Elisha the entrepreneur who also had a full-time job. And so I didn't have to take extra time
Love
off, but
that.
I just gave myself something additional that was all mine in my life.
Wow. Oh, I've got goosebumps just listening to that because
Oh,
I
thank
heard you
you.
say where focus goes, energy flows. And so that's what I heard you say focus a million times in this last explanation. And I love that because what it was is it was not your job, it was your relationship to your job, to quote you, and how you changed your focus. And that's what made the difference for you. And I'm just thinking about all of these places in life that we do that in so many ways. I'm unhappy in my marriage because I am an unhappy um, wife, and my husband is unhappy, and everything is unhappy, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the marriage. It could potentially, I mean, it also could be the marriage, don't get me wrong, but like
Sure.
it could potentially be the focus on the
Yes.
unhappiness of the marriage. Ah, this just feels like just sparkles. To
Yay!
quote you, what makes
Oh,
your
I love
soul
the word
sparkle?
sparkle.
Like
Yes, yes,
this is
yes.
this is a huge point of joy for me, just having these realizations. How fantastic is that?
Oh, I love this. Oh, anytime I can even put 1% joy in someone else, that that gives me joy, truthfully. That so Christine, to hear you say that, and it is true, and it's no one's fault. I don't want, any of the listeners thinking like, oh my gosh, it's my fault. I've been focusing on this thing. No, no one ever told you you can focus on something else. And we all learn life lessons along the way, but as soon as I'll tell you, Christine, the day I didn't get the promotion was the exact same day I texted my sister about starting a small business. And just the thought of starting a small business pulled me out of my lowest low that I had been in my career, and I had something to look forward to. And again, we talked about this earlier, it's not going to happen overnight, and I it took me, a year to even build the small business, but every time I would just work on it for 20 minutes, it was giving my focus something else. And again, I just wasn't obsessing over work anymore. And so the again, it's focus. Thank you for pointing out. I was realizing how many times I was saying it, but it's
I
so
loved it.
important and so paramount. It's so paramount to be able to change your focus. And that does take time. That's where, work comes in, of having to redirect your own thoughts. When you start spiraling, you have to really train your brain to be able to put your focus where it should be, in a place that makes you happy and joyful.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I can really see that. Listening to what you have to say there around, you've got your business, and often when people start a small business, um, the focus transitions to, oh, I can't wait to be done this terrible job, and then so that's a different focus, right? That is not infusing joy. It's not serving you. Instead, you could consider, I'm no longer Elisha that has a hard corporate job. Instead, you're Alicia who has a small business and a corporate job that supports that. And so
Exactly.
that's a minute razor's edge shift, but it served you. Whereas, like, sometimes people start a small bakery, for example, which congratulations on that. I hope you loved it. But they start that small bakery, and then the focus goes to, I can't wait to get rid of this stupid job. I hate this job, right? Which is not a serving focus.
Yep. Great point. Great point. And and I want to, make a big asterisk that everyone's situation is different. So to your point, if you're, starting a small business or a side venture, side hustle, whatever it may be, to make it your exit plan from your career, that could be your path, and that could be. But you make such a great point. Is when if that is the goal, still don't hate the job. You can still do the job, get the benefits, get the paycheck, and have it almost be your angel investor for your small business, and work towards that. And
Angel
it
investor.
yep, use your current career as your angel investor for your small business or side venture. And it that so good point. You want to, the whole purpose and of my goal, breaking up with burnout, is to lose the stress and the hate, and or I don't like to use the word hate, but the dissatisfaction with your job. And instead of being dissatisfied, go to work, do a great job, work with integrity. But then when you have off time, really, really focus on the joy it brings, and, what it could do for you long term. But if it truly is a side hustle and you want to keep the job and the paycheck and the career you build, then appreciate them both for what they are. Be grateful that you do have a job, and grateful that you have something incredible that you're creating on the side.
Alicia, you are as you say, a naturally happy person. I can see you're also a naturally positive person. And so I think that's probably served you quite a bit in your life. And I love that. I love seeing it. I'm curious for the person who might find themselves a little bit more on the negative side, and that's there's no fault there. We have upbringing, we have people who bring us to be really positive and happy. We have, personalities, we have gifts, etc. Everybody is different. But for somebody who's a little bit more on the negative side, what might you might say to them in terms of like helping to find focuses that are more positive, but it might not feel natural to them at first?
That's a great question, and thank you for saying that. I want to give a appreciation to my mom, who I'm a mini her, who made me who I am. And unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But anytime I can give her a
Yeah,
shout out, I will do so because I am a mini her. I am who I am because of her. She was always so happy, so
yes,
grateful, and so positive. So for someone that maybe not have that mindset, and I have some close friends that just and I don't even really call them negative, I call them cynical, and they know
that's
that,
fine.
and we
Yeah,
laugh about it, right? But one thing I can say that is a big shifter, in one person I can remember helping specifically is the act of gratitude. When you
Mhm.
are grateful for what you have in the moment, Christine, a lot of people are waiting for something to feel grateful for, the next job or the next relationship or the next paycheck. I'm going to, once I get that, I will be grateful. I want to ask your listeners to be grateful now. And of course, I don't know everyone's situation out there, and
Of course.
it could be bleak, but we all have something to be grateful for, even if it's the ability to hear this podcast, or be able to speak, or have all your limbs and your fingers, and it be alive, have shelter, have food in the cupboards, and just be grateful for what you have, and more things. You'll see how much more you have to be grateful for. And in my coaching, that's one of the things I do right away. The first thing I do with when I meet someone and work with them is I ask them to write down 100 things they're grateful for. And a lot of people think, wow, 100 things? To me, that's a very small number. But but then when I connect back with them and they say, you know what, it was easy, and they started writing 100 things, they could write 100 more, and that would just be my best advice to really, if you're cynical or negative, or you just have never had that ability to always look at the glass half full, instead of trying to be positive, just be grateful.
Mm. Such an important distinction.
I
Hmm.
think
Okay.
so.
Yeah. Well, this has just been fantastic. So I'm curious, in the book here, are we going to receive more kind of tips and tricks moving towards breaking up with burnout? You don't have to share all of your secrets with us today, but like, is how do you structure your book?
Thank you. Yes, I love talking about my book. So thank you so much, Christine. And again, it's called Breakup with Burnout. It will be released in the next 90 days. And I do have a lot of fun stories in there, but I do have a framework. I call it the brain, body, soul. And I mentioned that earlier. And it's
Mm.
how to, and I'll just go at a very high level, is how to redirect your brain, your body, and your soul, which to me is the full human experience. We all have a brain, a body, and a soul. That's what makes us us. And so I focus on those three parts of how to redirect your focus and attention from burnout to peace. And of course, through different exercises, different daily practices. But one of the things that I talk about heavily towards the end of the book is to find someone that can help you. And I call it an accountability partner, and some people kind of twinge at that phrase, but I really think that, breakthroughs rarely happen alone. It's hard to hold ourselves accountable when we're trying to make large life changes. And so really find someone, and I'm going to stress to make it outside of your current circle. So a counselor, a mentor, even so far as a therapist or a coach or someone that can keep you accountable and not be a protector like a friend or a family member would, but give you the honest truth and help
Mhm.
you in your path of change. And also, Christine, I want to tell your listeners is give yourself grace. As I mentioned, it takes a lot to try to change your own mind, to try to, your patterns, your behaviors, start new habits. It's not easy. It doesn't work overnight. So, the main things I'm going to leave you with and leave your listeners with is be grateful for what you have. Find someone that can help you make changes in your life and give yourself grace. Small habits, small changes every single day make big impacts in the long run.
Mm. Powerful first steps for, the person who's kind of coming into this and feeling like that burnout, that unhappiness is just so overarching to give the advice you've given. And I really want to capitalize on that. Give yourself grace. I mean, a lot of these kind of cheesy isms that everyone says, they're out there for a reason. And sometimes going towards the simple act of just giving yourself grace can be a huge proponent for change. So, thank you for that aspect as well. So, okay. So, I guess my next question would be, with your book, where, yeah, I know you've written another one. So, what's the first one called?
It's called Meek It Happen. My last name is Meek, and it's a little play on words. And it's about really finding joy in everyday life, but also accomplishing large life goals while dealing with the responsibilities of daily life. Have it right
Okay.
here. Make it
Oh,
happen.
amazing. That looks, oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, it
Yep.
cleared up there. That looks very cool. So so with the Meek It Happen, would you say that they're subsequent? Like, would you read the first one first in order to read Breakup with Burnout, or could you read them separately?
You can absolutely read them separately. Yes,
Okay.
yes. There's some similarities and parallels. Of course, once reading it, you'll think, man, this girl really wants me to find some joy in my
Yeah, yeah,
life.
yeah.
But I would say the breakup with burnout is definitely a standalone. And, I that one I'm really putting more emphasis on. The Meek It Happen was of course one of my biggest accomplishments. It was my first book, and I didn't market it. I was really secret about it. It was my first one. I really didn't tell anyone. I'm going the opposite direction and trying to tell everyone about this one, and really, really proud of both of them. But I'm really excited about the breakup with burnout one.
I am really looking forward to that book. Because that one, what I hear in the title is that it really is going to be a guide. It's really going to be, how do I break up with burnout? How do I move on from this? And so I think that, titleship is important. And I think that when I hear your title, I think to myself, if I'm in a place that I'm struggling, this is going to be a guide. It's going to help me. I'm going to walk away with some tools, tricks, exercises, etc. And that's what it feels like, and that's what it sounds like it's going to be from you as well. So that I'm excited for that.
Thank you. That I spent a lot of time on the title. Again, the first one, and I learned this after I published that titles should be clear, not clever. And I feel like with the first one, I went with clever. So make it happen. A lot of people, even if they see my name as my last name, it really doesn't resonate. So thank you for saying that. And you're absolutely right. It is a blueprint of how to break up with burnout. And the subtitle is uh, find joy, or I'm sorry, lose the burnout, keep the paycheck, discover your purpose. So I mean, it tells you, get rid of burnout. You can do it by keeping the paycheck without leaving your job, but really find your purpose, and which I find is joy. Find your joy.
Yeah. Well, and a really interesting parallel that I just thought I'd bring up is I just got off of a staff meeting before we did our recording, with I work for a counseling agency, and they said, what are we really seeing right now? And what we're really seeing in the counseling world is a lot of stress in Canada anyway, is a lot of stress at work, and a lot of needing to go on stress leaves and those sorts of things, and so it's interesting. Your timing on this book, I think, is impeccable. But also, it's interesting that we're seeing this more and more, and I'm sure that there's a whole episode that we could go on to as to why we're seeing all this more and more in the world today in North America. That would be a different podcast. But nevertheless, it is happening a lot. We are feeling a lot of stress in our workplaces. We are feeling a lot of stress in our modes of making income in order to have more joy and those sorts of things. So I do think that this is going to be a very applicable podcast for everyone listening here, no matter where they are in their life. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for being part of this really exciting episode where we really got to get excited about all these different ways that we can have joy in our lives. So if anyone wants to connect with you for, like, say you're coaching, or in 90 days they want to read your book, which by the time that we air this, I will preface that you might be 30 days, so like 60 to 30 days from her book. So that's exciting stuff as well. Less of a wait. So when that happens, how can they find you?
My first and foremost would be my website, and it's elishameek.com, first name, last name.com. And I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. Very unique name. I'm really, I think, the only one on there. For anyone listening, Elishameek, and I respond to every message, and or even email me, meek@elishameek.com. I respond to every email.
Amazing. Okay, well, I will link all of that information in the show notes. And just thanks again for coming on and bringing your really positive, fun, bubbly energy.
Thanks, Christine. I really appreciate you. You've been a wonderful host. I really appreciate you. And as I mentioned before, your communication is spot on. And I've had such a great time today. I really appreciate you giving me a platform on your show to speak about my message. So thank you so much.
Been a pleasure.